Yeah.
Because the mug isn't as warm, which is a bit of a blow.
But the good thing with that mug is that you can actually tell what colour the tea is.
Yeah, you can. Well, saying that,
It's always a plus.
what I think about that black mug is it really does test your skills. You shouldn't. It's like you play on a really nice pitch all year round. Can you go and do it on a cold?
Can you go and do it on a
Really nice.
black
Sam,
coloured
and,
red
we,
mug?
and we found out that Sam Carroll
Yeah.
couldn't.
It is difficult, like.
But then that's a
Judging the
test.
hue.
That's a test, isn't it?
Well, yeah.
It's like
It's unfair. No mugs. NordVPN.
hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm your host, Joe Rimmer, joined today by Paul Gorst. How are we, Paul?
Very good, yeah. On the back of Liverpool going top. And then we've got Arne Slot and Xabi Alonso to come later. So, yeah, the work never stops, does it?
Eventful day. Beth Lindop, you're joining us on an eventful day as well.
I am, yeah.
Yeah.
It's my...
Sad day.
Yeah, we've got some Beth.
sad day.
We'll get to it, Gorsty, don't ruin it. Yeah, well, first of all, Nord comes first, then Beth. But thanks for joining in. Thanks for listening. If you're on YouTube, I can see some comments coming in already. One about the hierarchy at the Echo. I will gladly correct the record there. And if you've got any other questions about the footy or elsewhere, drop them in the comments. We'll get to them. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever else you get your podcasts. Where else can you get your podcasts?
Amazon.
Yeah.
Something.
Dunno. Anyway, wherever you get them, give us a like, give us some stars, leave some comments, all those nice things. Be a nice person, and pay it forward. It's a nice sentiment on the on. I'm going to pay it forward to NordVPN. It's a nice segue as well, isn't it? Getting better at it. And say thank you, Nord, for being our sponsor, for looking after us, for keeping us company. And to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/bloodred, and our link gives you 4 months extra free on a 2-year plan. There's no risk at all with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box. Before we start, we've got some Blood Red news, some sad Blood Red news. This is officially the last Beth Lindop Blood Red pod. Beth is leaving us. I hope you're not leaving us forever in terms of you will come back and do some pods with us. The door is closed at the moment there, but it literally
It will be left open.
Yeah, it is open. And do you want to tell us a little bit more about where you're off to?
Yeah, so I am moving over to ESPN to become the Liverpool correspondent, which is nice in the sense that I'll still get to see a lot of familiar faces, and certainly in Doyley and Gorsty, I'm sure will be still sick of the sight of me within a few months. But yeah, very excited, but also very sad. I've obviously had an amazing few years here at Reach, and particularly in this office. So yeah, I'm sure you won't be able to get rid of me that easy. I'll be popping up every now and again, jumping on the podcast if you're a man short and
a woman short.
And yeah, a woman short. Yeah. But no, hopefully we can. This can be a good one, and we can go out on a high.
Luke Allman said give Salah the 3 years he wants. Give Beth the 3 years she wants, yeah. Apparently you said recently that they shouldn't play Trent because he's leaving the club. So should you be on this podcast?
Should we just go and get Theo to come in?
Just chuck you out.
To be fair, actually, before we dive straight in, sorry to hijack your podcast.
No, it's all right. It's not my podcast. It's our podcast. It's everyone's podcast.
I got a little bit of stick in the office this morning because I tweeted something at the weekend sort of saying how brilliant Mo Salah is. And it was interpreted by our Everton colleagues as me saying that he was underrated, which I didn't actually say. But I stand by that point. I think he's not broadly given the respect that he deserves in comparison with, maybe some of his peers.
Well, I mean, you are hijacking the podcast,
Yeah.
but there is. I've got a whole Salah section planned.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
I mean, I know you're going it alone shortly, but yeah. I actually kind of wanted to carry on the Beth theme. Of course, would you like to say something nice about Beth?
The Beth theme. Yeah, I mean, so your job title at ESPN is now the Liverpool FC correspondent.
It's Liverpool correspondent.
Liverpool correspondent.
Yeah.
See, when you're the correspondent, that means does that mean you're number one in the pecking order?
Well, we'll get to the pecking order in a minute. Chicken KF10 has asked us about the...
I would suggest that would place you as number one in the pecking order of Liverpool reporters for ESPN.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Another lovely segue.
Yeah, fair play to you. We will miss you, Beth. And I think if you are a listener and you don't subscribe to ESPN or follow them on Twitter or read their content, I'm sure you'll be doing a lot of that soon. We probably just lost a third of our listeners.
And also as well, let's say thank you for our lovely parting gifts, which we've just opened before the podcast started.
I've got mine here, which is it's Kermit drinking. You probably can't see that. You can probably just see there a little label, little Carabao label on my mug. Beth knows how much I love Carabao, and how much I love tea, and how much I love that gift. So, thank you, Beth.
Very welcome.
Ghosty, what did you get?
Yeah, I got a mug of my favourite Liverpool player, who's no longer at the club.
Yeah.
But I will be.
Fantastic defender.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Left back.
Warrior, absolute warrior. Yes, so thank you, Beth, for our parting gifts.
You're very welcome. My
There we
pleasure.
go. Right.
Enough about me.
Yeah, enough about you. A couple of questions before we start. Can you let us know about the black mug and football pitch analogy? All I was saying was that we were talking on the...
Someone heard that, did they?
Someone heard that. But basically,
It's worrying.
if you can make good tea in a black mug, you're a good tea maker. If you can make good tea in a white mug, then you could still be a good tea maker, but you haven't really been tested. And the true
It's like the equivalent of a Tuesday night at Stoke, isn't it? That analogy.
Exactly that. And I was saying that it's like playing on a nice pitch. You know, it makes you look a bit better. If you can play on a grubby pitch, that's even better. And can you enlighten us the hierarchy in the Echo office? A recent comment from Doyley made out like Joe was his boss. Up until then, I thought Gorsty was top dog. And Ian was the grizzled vet
That is correct.
that passed on the top job, and Joe was the office up and comer. I probably still am an up and comer because I still
You are
got,
the youngest of the three,
I am
aren't
the
you,
youngest,
to be
but
fair?
You're not in the 30 under 30 anymore, though, are you?
no,
It's long sailed.
No, long sailed, thanks. But I am technically Doyley's line manager. Ipso facto, I'm your boss. So, I mean, so there you are. And Doyley is the grizzled vet, and Ghosty is top dog. So, chicken KF10, you're right. On all fronts.
All counts, yeah.
Yeah, Chris Brack says, good luck, Beth. Congratulations. Sanjay Mystery says, good luck, Beth. Congratulations.
I like
Thank you very
Sanjay.
much.
He's always confident, isn't he?
Yeah, and Chicken KF10 says, Ghosty, you were blocking Beth's career progress. We need youngsters on the pitch.
Well, I mean, that's very true, yeah.
Right, let's get to the pod. Ghosty, it was a big weekend for Liverpool, wasn't it? I mean, not just at Anfield, but elsewhere. Results went their way. But it was a tale of two halves at Anfield. Brighton came to Anfield, they dominated, to be perfectly honest, didn't they? But Liverpool came back strong and got the win.
Yeah, I mean, when we've obviously got the full-time results in from Newcastle before the game, and you're thinking this is an ideal opportunity for Liverpool to go 7 points clear of Arsenal with victory. And you're assuming the City are going to take care of their own business, aren't you? But you're just thinking 7 points at this stage of the season for an Arsenal team who were looking a bit out of sorts. That's quite big. Really, you think of next week, if they lose to Chelsea and Liverpool beat Villa, it goes to 10. And then, you really are starting to think of them as out of the running. And then it looked like...
but especially in recent seasons where 10 points is a lot.
Yeah.
It's not. This isn't the 90s where you could be 9 ahead and still, we've seen, haven't we, that makes a big difference. Sorry, Gus.
But then for the first 45 minutes, you're thinking that a golden opportunity is really passing Liverpool by, and Brighton were well worthy of their 1-0 lead. Kadioglu scores a great goal, and he could have had a second. That ball through from, it was Ayari, defence splitting pass to Welbeck. Brilliant save from Kelleher. Could have completely changed the outcome of that game. And Liverpool's press just wasn't at it. It was too sort of half-hearted. They weren't doing it, weren't hunting in numbers. It was just sort of, 1 or 2 goal when 3 or 4 were needed. And Brighton were playing around it really comfortably and playing through midfield and creating all the chances. And they were brilliant, to be fair, but second half, I think, was a sort of introduction into the power of Anfield for Arne Slot. He hasn't really had to use that weapon so far in his time at Liverpool, and the atmosphere has been sort of criticised a lot, hasn't it, and debated a lot, but second half was exactly what it's all about, and I thought the changes made a difference as well, Curtis Jones in particular, obviously Luis Diaz, and really strong second half, game of two halves is the old cliche, but Liverpool were so much better in the second half, and the fact that the goals come in the manner that they did, sort of 2 minutes apart, when the atmosphere was at its most fervent, sort of suggests that, the players on the pitch can do great things, but the fans have still got a huge part to play in whatever can happen this season, and we know now that City dropped points as well. So it just had a little bit of a feel of a sort of huge weekend for the rest of the season, really.
I mean, there's lots to get through, Beth. Just first and foremost, how impressed have you been by Arne Slot's ability to, seemingly Nottingham Forest aside, but always pull something out the bag? I mean, Liverpool, when they've played well, when they've played badly, then when they've been under pressure, a goal behind, they seem to be able to find solutions, and he seems to always stay calm and find those solutions, doesn't he? He did that at the weekend.
Yeah, he does. I think that was one of Jurgen Klopp's great superpowers, wasn't it? That ability to sort of instill belief in the team, no matter what the state of play was. You know, you never felt under Jurgen Klopp that if Liverpool were a goal, even a couple of goals down, that they were completely out of it. And I think Arne Slot is obviously a very different kind of manager, but slowly but surely you already feel like he's capable of doing that and galvanising them to come from behind. I thought his substitutions were fantastic on Saturday. It's another big tick against his name. As Gorsty said, the players who came on did really, really well. But yeah, I think there really was a sense that if Liverpool did drop points there on Saturday, it would have been a huge missed opportunity. And I think there were a few people who drew parallels after the game. So I think it was the same weekend in 2019 when
Aston Villa,
they beat Aston Villa, came from behind to beat them, and that felt like a moment. Now obviously it's still super early in the season, still a lot of games to play, and I'm sure there'll be loads of twists and turns, but it definitely is one of those games where I think come the end of the season, if Liverpool do end up with some silverware, you look back and you say that had a big part to play in it.
Definitely. I want to come to Salah in a minute. I think a lot of this pod will be talking about Mo Salah, but first of all, you wrote a piece yesterday, Gorsty, a really good piece, superbly edited as well, about the Anfield atmosphere. But it feels like it's been debated about a lot this season, but it felt significant on Saturday that I think everyone knew how important that win would have been, and everyone at Anfield played their part in making that happen.
Yeah, it's the old shout, isn't it? Where's your famous atmosphere when away teams come to Anfield? And I don't know what they're expecting, whether you think it's going to be like Chelsea 2005 or Barcelona 2019 or San Etienne, if you're from that generation. But when Anfield needs to be Anfield in all its glory, it will be. And I think a couple of times last season it sort of became that sort of feral, belligerent atmosphere that really helped Liverpool against Luton and Sheffield United, which were two of the sort of surprise games of last season where Liverpool fought back, and it was a really sort of rocking atmosphere in the second half to inspire that comeback. And this is very much in the same mould. You don't want to be looking to use it every week because it's sort of the law of diminishing returns, isn't it? The more you sort of lean into it, the less effective it becomes, I guess. But it is there for big moments and big days, and Saturday just felt like that because City was 1-0 down, then 2-0 down, Arsenal had already been beaten, and it just felt like a massive opportunity was slipping away. So I think what actually sort of turned it around was Trent getting involved in a little bit of aggro with Stupinian down the Anfield Road end, and then it reminded me a bit of when Klopp had the argy-bargy on the side with Arteta when Liverpool went and won 4-0, because I think for maybe 40 minutes of that it was just pedestrian and quiet and nothing was really happening, and then that whips the crowd up and Liverpool go on and batter Arsenal, and it was something similar to that really from what I can remember. And yeah, it's great that Slot's sort of been introduced to that now and sort of gets a little bit of flavour of what all the sort of reputation is about. And Fabian Herzl made reference to it, and Slot did as well after the game. So it really helped turn the game around, and the players played their part in it. And I think that bodes well for the next few weeks with Real Madrid to come and Leverkusen on Tuesday, and of course that game against Manchester City in less than a month.
Yeah,
it's a bit stupid from Stupinian, wasn't it?
Yeah, we're gonna miss these, aren't we?
Yeah, we're gonna miss them. That, to be fair, I quite like that. Yeah. That's all right. Let's talk Salah. I want to have the is he underrated debate, because I actually think it's worth having, and I think I understand why our Evertonian colleagues might have got their back up a little bit by that, but I think there is an argument to say that he's underrated.
Are we naming names?
Before...
I mean, Joe Thomas, I will...
Is Joe Thomas here?
Joe Thomas is here, he is, yeah. Who actually, he's usually pretty fair, I would say, with his football takes, but he gave me a little bit of a grilling this morning.
Yeah. Well, before we get to that, I just want to talk about Salah's social media post, because if you haven't seen, he posted yesterday, and I felt like this, and I don't know whether either of you two will agree, but I felt this was slightly out of character, or certainly more revealing than we mainly get from Salah. Usually get a couple of emojis or whatever, but top of the table is where this club belongs, nothing less. All teams win matches, but there's only one champion in the end. That's what we want. Thank you for your support last night. No matter what happens, I will never forget what scoring at Anfield feels like. I mean, I start with you, Beth. I don't know about you, but I felt like that was Salah almost pulling back the curtain, the most we've seen, to say, I really do, this club means a lot to me. And whether I stay or leave, you know, I'm emotionally invested here. It's not just another stop on my journey. And it's not, because sometimes I think for Salah, you could accuse him of being not selfish as a football player on the pitch, but selfish in his pursuit of glory, in terms of he wants to win big awards, Ballon d'Ors, you know, those types of things, and be top scorer and break records. But this felt like someone who really wants to drive the club to success, certainly before he leaves.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think you can overstate how much Mo Salah loves Liverpool Football Club. You know, he's completely adored here, but I think that is totally mutual. I think he probably doesn't get enough credit, and I think this is maybe one of the reasons why I do feel like he's, you know, maybe underappreciated a little bit at times, because he's a genuine superstar and has been for a number of years, and yet has he ever publicly pushed for a transfer? Has he ever gone in the media and said, oh, I quite fancy going to Madrid, or I quite fancy doing this? He's never ever done that. He's never pushed to leave the club or to try and suggest that he's bigger than the club. And I think, you know, the fans love Roberto Firmino, and rightly so. He's a legend, Sadio Mane as well. But I just think, you know, sometimes Mo's not viewed through that same lens, where people sort of just love him. Which to me is so weird, because out of the three of them, I think his love for this club shines through. Maybe doesn't shine through more, actually. I suppose, like you say, it's quite rare that he is that open and that emotional. He does always do, like, every now and then he drops those posts, and he did one, I think, before Liverpool played Madrid in the Champions League final, and where it's quite reflective. I mean, first of all, I would love to know how that actually comes about. Like, does he just sit on his phone after a game?
Couch and just, you know, put that
or is this like more of a calculated thing?
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a few people say take it as an indicator that he was leaving, or as if it was a goodbye. To me, I actually think it's maybe the opposite. Not in terms of that there's been movement on the contract front, but more, to me, that was him saying to Liverpool, the ball's in your court.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think I took it to mean like he's almost had a conversation with whoever's around him and said to them, I don't want the fans to think that I just don't care and that I just want to leave. I want them to know that I do want to stay, or I do value this club, and whatever happens, whether I can agree a good new deal or not, that it means a lot to me.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, whether you can debate the sort of where it's come from, you know, was Mo Salah just throwing that out when he's sitting on the couch watching Netflix or whatever, or whether he's spoken with his team. But either way, whoever has posted that, whoever signed off on it, it's come from Salah, hasn't it? Essentially, he will be the one who's given it the green light. So, yeah, I totally agree with Beth in terms of it's just a sort of volley across the court to say the ball's in your court now. And yeah, you do wonder what is happening behind the scenes. You know, we reported a couple of months back now, wasn't it? Was it the September international break that Salah, by all accounts, is really keen to stay, and I think that statement on Sunday is sort of in line with that. You know, whatever happens, what was the phrase? Whatever happens, I won't forget what scoring goals in Anfield feels like, or something like that.
No matter what happens, I will never forget what scoring at Anfield feels like.
So we'll see. I think if the club and Michael Edwards, who we know is famously sort of steadfast and refuses to deviate at times from the data, I think if they were looking for evidence as to what Salah can still contribute, because it's not a total no-brainer, because he is 32 and he is the highest paid player at the club and in club history. So you've got to be careful with those sorts of salary demands and what it could cost the club if you do make a mistake. But 15 games in now, he scored 9 goals, was it 7 assists. He's going to be Liverpool's top scorer again. He's pushing, clearly wants to win a Premier League title. Sure, he'll be hell-bent on doing something in the Champions League as well. So I don't think we're going to see a dramatic drop-off anytime soon for at least 18 months, 2 years. And we'll still be talking about Mo Salah being one of the best players around in that time if he does stay. It's a bit like Cristiano Ronaldo-esque, isn't it? Lionel Messi-esque, where they're still performing at top levels well into the mid to late 30s. So, I just think he's a special case. You don't view him in the same way you do any other 32-year-old.
And he's such an important cog in the way the team plays now. I mean, what I find fascinating about Salah is how he's changed his game so much to the player who came in, who was like almost like someone who liked to run with the ball. Then he became a bit of a poacher. Now he seems very good at holding it up. He brings other players into play. He still gets in the right place at the right time, but he's so much more of a creative force, I think, now, Beth. And my other thing about his contract is how much do Liverpool value the off the pitch stuff? Like, this is a guy who, like, I always remember reading that thing about Harvey Elliott when he took some bread off Harvey Elliott's plate and said, just stick to one slice of bread. and these seem little things, but I mean, no one takes food off your plate, do they?
No.
Like Phil Leotard.
Round the toast.
But I mean, those sorts of things, surely, if you're any young player in that club or coming into that club, having one of the best players in the world and someone who, in terms of as a specimen, this guy looks after himself like he's almost like a scientific experiment, isn't he? So in shape. Surely having someone around like that is so vital to these young players. And just like I felt like Milner and Henderson towards the end of their Liverpool careers, Liverpool kept them around, not just because of what they did on the pitch, but because of the way they were around the club. Surely Salah has that. Van Dijk surely has that. Surely Salah has that as well about him now.
Yeah, he's a model professional, isn't he? I mean, that injury he had earlier this year, that kept him out for what, about a month or so, 2 months maybe? That was the longest sort of muscle injury that he'd had, one of the first muscle injuries he'd had during his whole time at the club, and that in itself is remarkable, particularly when you consider that a number of Liverpool's other players have had pretty sketchy injury records. So it's a testament to how fit he keeps himself, and I think that's why, as Gorst said, that comparison with Cristiano Ronaldo, whatever you might think of him as a Liverpool fan, it is someone who has kept himself in absolute pristine condition, and it's paid off for him. He's still performing, maybe not quite at the highest level now, but was until a couple of years ago, and I think Salah could absolutely sort of follow his lead in that. I think he could be playing until he's 35, 36 at the highest level. I also think he's someone who wants to be playing until he's 35, 36, and perhaps that might be where there are a few difficult conversations when it comes to contract negotiations, because I can't see him being a player who wants to agree to saying, well, I'll take a pay cut or I'll play more of a diminished role in the next few years, because he feels, and probably rightly feels, that he is still Liverpool's main man. And I think at the end of the day, while he's performing in the way that he has done so far this season, he's well within his rights to sit down at a negotiating table and say, I'm going to name the price, and if you don't want to match that, then I'll walk away.
I remember actually asking Jurgen Klopp a question in one of the old Zoom press conferences before one of the Champions League games, so it must have been easily 3 years ago now, when it said, do you see a world in where Mo Salah is still playing into his mid to late 30s in the same way Messi is, Ronaldo and Ibrahimovic at the time, who was still at Milan? And he said, undoubtedly, the way he looks after himself, his dedication, his commitments off the field, to recovery, to preparation, all that sort of stuff is just absolute textbook professionalism. And lo and behold, 3 years later, Klopp's gone, but Salah's still the main man at Liverpool, very much so. So, it's just a question of how much does he feel he can give for the next few years. And look, he's making sacrifices as well, because he didn't go to the Olympics with Egypt, which I'm sure he would have liked to have gone and try and compete for the gold medal. He declined the opportunity to play against Mauritania on the pitch when Egypt were quite concerned, and Liverpool quite concerned about the artificial pitch that they were going to play on. So
didn't go to Saudi. I mean, the money he would have earned there, he probably would have been the highest paid player there, wouldn't he?
And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with the international break coming up, because I think Egypt have already qualified, so they don't necessarily have to lean on Mohamed Salah there. So does he take the opportunity to rest for 2 weeks and really rest up ahead of that busy November? And, maybe, get the pen out again. So I think, aside from him, preparing right and all that sort of stuff for Liverpool, he's also making sacrifices elsewhere, which can't be easy really given his profile in Egypt, but he's doing it, and it's paying off handsomely, isn't it?
Just to go back to those words, top of the table where this club belongs, nothing less. and we want to win the championship. I also think it's standards. I think it's easy to sneer, isn't it, and say the United Old Boys Club on, say, the overlap. But I always think it's interesting when you listen to them and you talk about the standards that he's become a bit of a caricature. But I like Roy Keane. I think he clearly set standards as a United captain. That rubbed people up the wrong way at times, but that dragged them to heights. But you think of any club that has won major honours, they've had characters like that. Liverpool did in the 80s, and when they lost those characters, they slipped away. United the same. When they lost those characters, they
Henderson
slipped
and
away.
Milner were vital.
Henderson,
for
Milner,
that.
Salah is clearly vital, and he's clearly vital at saying this is where this club belongs, and they don't accept. I can't imagine that Liverpool's dressing room accepts any dosses, whereas I think at United right now they do. I think there has been an acceptance that you can, you see some of the reports about Rashford going to nightclubs like in Northern Ireland and then coming home. I just don't think Liverpool accept that sort of thing, and that's because there are characters like Salah who put their football career above all else. There's no, you don't see Salah going out and having a social life, do you? And maybe that's a bit boring for some.
Yeah, one thing I'd say about the Liverpool squad is they've got the Egypt captain, the Scotland captain, Hungary captain, Japan captain. Conor Bradley's now the Northern Ireland captain. So they've got leaders of the countries, and you don't get to that level without being a dedicated professional, do you? Without doing the right things during the week. So all this sort of stuff might sound a bit boring, but it's what helps create a culture at a club. And when you've got that many across the squad who are like that, you can't help but follow their lead, I guess. Particularly if you're a younger player like a Curtis Jones, a Harvey, or Kwanzaa or someone like that.
Chicken Kiev 10's just made a Sopranos reference, so he's in my good books today. With Salah, I just think there has to be some sort of common ground people can find here at this club, because it for him to leave. I also think, where does he go? I just look around, think, does he go to Saudi? He's far too good for Saudi. Does he go and play a year at a Barcelona or a Juventus? I just don't think that's necessary.
No, and I also think Liverpool have to consider, how much are they willing to pay to replace him?
Yeah.
Because I think Mo Salah is in that bracket where he is irreplaceable. You're not going to, like for like, get someone who comes in and does what he's done for the last 7-8 years. So, that's not to say you can't bring in a really good player who could massively contribute for you, but it would have to be someone special. And I think, Liverpool might find an uncut gem somewhere and polish them up and build a new superstar, but there's every chance they'd have to go and pay 70, 80, 90 million in the transfer market to bring in someone who does that, and we know that's not the way Liverpool really do like to operate. So maybe that is something for them to consider, the hierarchy, and I'm sure it is something they are considering when they're factoring in, do we give Mo a new contract?
That's exactly. I think they're going to go for an uncut gem. Let's say this, for argument's sake, and you'll know more than me, I don't, but this Marmoush guy, at Stuttgart.
Great name.
Surely he can go alongside Salah until such a time when he becomes the man. And I just, you look at Liverpool's wage, they've got strict wage structures, but they've got big earners off the wage bill in the last couple of years. Henderson won, Fabinho, Firmino, Salah, Klopp would have been a huge earner. All of them have gone, so surely there are, and you can't break it because then other players will want parity, but that's a worry. The other worry for me, Gorsty, and I've said this to my dad earlier, to me, the biggest worry out of the three is they still haven't come to an agreement with Van Dijk, who I think certainly second half helped Liverpool push on Saturday and help them win the game. But I maybe this is just a really simplistic way of looking at it, but I would have thought Van Dijk would have been the easiest of the three to get.
Yeah, I think that's a common opinion, isn't it? That would be the easiest to resolve, and I agree with it. It's one where there hasn't been any huge talk of him leaving. Obviously the Real Madrid stuff doesn't go away with Trent, and Salah has been the subject of interest from Saudi Arabia, but Van Dijk seems quite content. But you worry that Liverpool might rest on their laurels with that one, because every club in the world would be queuing up to get Virgil van Dijk in. So, yeah, I mean, he confirmed after the Chelsea game that talks are underway, and that was the first public confirmation of that, at least. And these things do take time. I think I asked him after the Sevilla friendly, which was early August, and he said no change on the situation. But, what is it? So it's 2.5 months later, he's saying that discussions are underway. So, where was the phone picked up along that way, if you were to believe him? And the ball got rolling on it. We're not sure, but they do take time, these sorts of things. I think Kwanzaa's took maybe 3 or 4 months. I remember Adrian, he signed the contract extension and he got asked about it, and he basically said, say the contract extension came in August, and he said Michael Edwards got in touch around April time. So when it's a contract which seems relatively straightforward like that, and that's still taking 3 or 4 months, it gives you a bit of an idea of how long these things take. So,
but then how come? And I take your point there, and you know, I suppose they've got to go to solicitors, and anyone who's ever bought a house, no offence to any solicitors listening, but that takes a long time to get sorted. So obviously things like that take, but then they can sign someone on deadline day in a matter of hours, so they can get those things done quickly when they want to. Yeah,
you're right. It's fascinating, isn't it, how it all works? I mean, I just hope they don't take Virgil's situation for granted, because I think he's in superb form and has been all season, really. And you'd be stupid if you're thinking that there's not going to be clubs interested, and in less than 2 months they can officially sort of register their interest, can't they, with his representatives? So, it's not Richard Hughes's mess, but it's one that he has to clean up. And I think sort of what happens in the next 4 to 6 months will almost define his tenure as a sporting director, which might sound a bit harsh, but you know, he's been landed with this, and it's in his in tray, and you know, went into the depths of winter now, and there's still no public progress.
Yeah, Chris Brack says, in an ideal world, Van Dijk and Salah announced over the international break, Trent on the eve of the Madrid game, which would be nice, just to complete the contract hat-trick. Beth, Trent was good at the weekend again, wasn't he? I mean, he gave a few passes away early doors, but some of his defending, and considering how at length we talked about, I say we actually, probably what really wasn't us, but the country seemed to talk about Trent's defending last year. This year, he's taken on Matoma there, who's given lots of defenders nightmares this season and in previous seasons. But he stood up really well to him, and he just seems really on it at the moment defensively.
Yeah, I thought he was really poor first half rather, but I think, you know, was far from the only one. And then you really did see in the second half that difference. I think Arne said after the game, he'd sort of said to them, it's not about tactics, it's about running and that will to win and put effort in. I think they were outworked Liverpool in the first half, which is not often you can really say that about a Liverpool team. So, I think Trent was one of the ones who really benefited in that second half from that sort of renewed intensity. And, there's those moments where you see him sort of taking in the crowd, and, you know, his love for the club is evident. And when you see his reaction, you know, when Salah scores and all of those moments like that, you do really think, you know, there's someone here who does love the club, and, you know, is there a way that a solution can be reached? But I do agree, I think defensively this season he's been tremendous for the most part. He's had a couple of bad halves, a couple of bad, you know, spells in games, but we know he can be a game changer going forward. But I think, you know, that has been one real bonus of Arne Slot coming in, is I think he really has hammered him on the defensive side, and you feel like he takes a little bit more pride in that now, which is good to see. And I think it also helps Konate as well, because all of a sudden he's not having to cover 2 positions, and I thought he did really, really well in that second half.
Good news on the Konate front. He trained today, but his replacement Joe Gomez came in and just reminded us. I feel like Joe Gomez does this every year or so. He comes in and has a few games where you go, actually, he's a pretty good player, whether that's at left back, right back, or back to centre back at the weekend. But again, a player who nearly left the club in the summer, but will have a part to play going forward.
Yeah, he's one of those players, isn't he? You know, Klopp used to talk about players needing rhythm and momentum, and he's sort of fits into that category. When he plays regularly, you start to realise how good he is. So he's had 3 halves of football there against Brighton, and he's been excellent. Certainly second half on Saturday he came in and minimum fuss, just did his job superbly and helped steer the game Liverpool's way. Kept the likes of Rutter quiet in the second half, and Danny Welbeck and Matoma as well. And yeah, he was really good, wasn't he? And he almost got Liverpool back in the game with the header. You could almost sense the sort of expectant gasps from the Kop when that ball comes across, and he gets a decent contact on. He's probably a bit too far out, is the only thing, and Verbruggen holds it quite comfortably in the end, but it almost felt like that was going to be the moment for him after 9 years to make it 1-1. But he did his job down the other end, and if there was any concern over Konate, I think Gomez sort of made that a little bit easier to stomach, but Konate is fine, just a few cuts and bruises on the hand, really, and it looked quite sore when he was coming off. He looked like he was nearly in tears, sort of holding his arm, shoulder
he did get
area.
trod on by another man mountain, didn't he? Which must have...
But, I mean, thankfully that's okay, and he can play because he's been one of Liverpool's best players of the season, really, Canate. But Joe Gomez with another reminder that he's also a quality centre-back.
Yeah, I just want to touch on a couple more players, Beth, before we start looking ahead to Leverkusen. Cody Gakpo is a player who just feels like he's got the bit between his teeth at the moment. I think in the past, he's a bit streaky, Gakpo. I feel like sometimes he goes through a few games where he's on the periphery, he does some nice things, but he's not so decisive. But recently he's been obviously very good. A couple of goals in midweek and then the goal at the weekend. I know it was a cross, but you feel more like confident that he can make something happen, don't you? And that he can be decisive in the final third, basically, and get goals, get assists, and create things for Liverpool.
Yeah, and I think he feels that as well, which is quite important. I think he strikes me as quite a thoughtful player and person. I think he's a very intelligent footballer, and I think when footballers are like that, you sense that sometimes maybe they doubt themselves. Yeah, and maybe he doubts himself a little bit sometimes. I think, did Jurgen Klopp say once that he had to sort of pick him up a little bit, and I think his quality is not in any doubt. It is just that consistency and ability to do it on a regular basis. But I think one thing I've really liked actually is when Arne Slot has been asked about him over the last few weeks, he's made clear that he is a regular starter. I think a few people have put it to him that Diaz is sort of the number one, and he's been quite quick to be like, no, Cody's a regular starter. And I think that all feeds into this narrative about him being now a real fundamental part of what Liverpool do, and I think that he feels that too. And I also think, what I do like about him, what I've liked about him in the last few weeks, is he's not afraid to have a shot, which, I think the way that Arne Slot wants Liverpool to play when it comes off is fantastic. But there are times, sometimes you're sat in the ground and you're just thinking, just someone shoot. You don't always need to try and walk it into the goal. And I don't
think Luis Diaz is one for shooting as much now.
No.
Yeah. When he first arrived, I think he did. But
yeah, I think it's a lot more in general for most of them. It's a lot more. Szoboszlai is probably the worst culprit in terms of there's times when you know how good he is in terms of striking the ball, and he just seems at the minute a bit reticent to shoot. But Gakpo's showed, he's two incredible goals in midweek, and then obviously gets a little bit fortunate with that one at the weekend. But that just comes from him having a bit of a pop and putting it into a good area, and it comes off.
If it doesn't go in, someone touches it and it goes in, doesn't it? It's such a good ball.
That's the thing. It's like, that's my biggest bugbear with short corners, because I always think if you whip it in, you never know what's going to happen. Someone might get a touch. Just get it in the mixer.
Sometimes you've got to change the angle, Beth.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure whether Nunez had got the touch to begin with for the goal, because when it went in, the camera in the press box was sort of showing Nunez running away celebrating.
But I think everyone did, because I can tell you the picture captions came through with Nunez celebrating. The front page of our paper almost had him celebrating a Liverpool winner, which he didn't score until Steve Graves picked up on it and had them change it. So I want to talk about Nunez actually, Gorsty, so thank you for that segue. We're segueing all over the place here, aren't we? Great. Have you ever been on a Segway?
No.
Great.
I'd end up on my face.
I have to get him to sponsor us.
Yeah. If anyone's got one, we could do a blood red special on Segways. That'd be great.
With a GoPro on my head.
Yeah, I've had to go on a Segway and they're really good. You think you're going to go on your face and then they just... So, anyway, I've segued out.
You've segued out of the Segway,
yeah. But back to Nunez. I find him fascinating to watch at the moment, Ghosty, because he just... Considering you think back to this time last season, and every game we'd be sitting here talking about Nunez has had 10 shots, 6 of them at the bar, one of them he'd put over the bar from 6 yards out, the other one he'd missed the ball, but he caused loads of problems and Liverpool won 5-1. He just hadn't scored. Whereas now he doesn't even seem to have a shot, but seems to be lagging all over the pitch, defending his own area, and others Liverpool seem a bit more functional, but he just is. It's like, I don't know if someone's transformed him into Cout overnight. I don't really know.
Yeah, I seen it. Is it the little spider
I saw that,
and the shot per night he was way down here, whereas last season it would have been sort of at the boundary of the chart, and he's totally different type of player now, isn't he? I was gutted for him actually when that one didn't go in the first half, because that would have been goal of the season.
He is so unlucky, isn't he? You do think sometimes a goalkeeper always seems to have a worldie against him, or it just like skims the post.
Yeah.
It is a very unlucky footballer.
And that run was the little touch to like flick it over his shoulder.
Skinned Veltman and then shrugged off Kadioglu and then carried it in. And maybe if being uber critical, he could have aimed for the corner a bit more because it's quite central for Bruggen to get a hand on it. But that would have been an exceptional goal. And he's just fitting in, isn't he? He's more of a system player now.
That's it, isn't it?
He's creating these chances, these opportunities for other players. He's occupying defenders to sort of release space for the wingers. And yeah, it's a different type of Nunez. He gets his goal against Leipzig, which I hope was going to push him on. He hasn't scored since, but yeah, I'm a lot more optimistic now. He's had a little bit of a run in the team than it was earlier in the season when it just felt like he was a little bit of a square peg in a round hole in the slot system.
He should have got an assist really as well, shouldn't he? That flick he does for Salah is brilliant in the second half, and Salah tries to dink it over and it gets a bit unlucky.
His understanding with Salah is really good. I don't know whether that's just natural or whether they've worked on it, but the amount of times those two set each other up. Look at the equaliser at Arsenal last week. It's a really promising partnership there.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because in some ways he's much less dangerous than he was. And a lot of the things that I felt were strengths last season are gone. But you feel like he's a better player in the team now. You feel like his manager would certainly be happier with him because you seem to get more of a consistent performance out of him. But yeah, it's very odd to watch him. It's a completely different player. And I find it's almost mind-boggling that that's exactly the same player that was there last season. So I still think, for me, and you guys might completely disagree with this, but I think if Liverpool were playing in a final tomorrow and had everyone fit, I still think I'd be more tempted to put Nunez in than I would Jota.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed.
You don't have to agree.
No, I probably I think Nunez, particularly the way that he's playing at the moment, makes more happen than Diogo Jota. I think Diogo Jota can go through spells where he'll be anonymous in a game for 70 minutes, but inevitably then pops up with a goal. There was that famous Neil Jones tweet, wasn't there, a few years back?
Jota 3-1.
Jota 3-1, and he was sort of the master of that, just coming off the bench and killing a game and whatever. So yeah, but I've been really impressed with Nunez. Like I say, I think he is incredibly unlucky, but you almost think as well, is the change in him almost reflective of the change in who's in the dugout as well. I think with Klopp it was all about emotion and passion. I'm not saying there wasn't brilliant tactical nous there as well, but with Slot it is all about being a little bit more measured and composed, and maybe that's rubbing off on him.
They've clearly done something to alter the amount of times that Nunez is in a shooting position because he was a shot magnet last season, wasn't he? Maybe it was just a bit more of a play on the hoof at times up front, and that's inevitably the way Nunez plays the game. But it's been interesting to watch the sort of change in style from Nunez. But to go back to the original point, I think I'd still go with Jota as the number 9 of Liverpool playing the final next week.
You can never fault his effort, Nunez, but I feel like it's a more concentrated effort now, whereas in the past, like you say, it was a bit more on the hoof, sort of charging around the pitch. But some of his defensive work now, back in his own our own third, it's quite eye-catching, really, how he gets back and wins tackles, puts pressures on, and like you say, seems to be connecting more in the middle of the pitch than I felt like he was doing last season. Before we pick teams and make predictions for the Leverkusen game, I just want to touch on Alonso, obviously very linked to being Liverpool manager last season. There's an incredible impact at Leverkusen, but just going back to as a player, can you remember him?
I can. He's one of the first. He's probably part of the era of the first sort of era that I remember.
How old did you have been when he signed? 2004.
4.
That makes me feel old.
Yeah, it makes me feel incredible.
Yeah. So I remember
17.
sort of. I remember Istanbul. My dad was out there, so I was watching at home. Obviously, didn't really have much of a clue what was going on, but understood that it was, it was important, and he was a part of that first real generation of Liverpool players that I remember.
Was he on the
really.
back of the shirt at any point?
I don't think he was. I think it was Stevie.
Did knock Carl Majani off now?
No, he didn't. It was Stevie all the way, I think.
Stevie all the way. Fair enough.
But yeah, incredible player, and it's obviously translated to what he's doing now as a manager.
Yeah, I remember his debut, Gorsty, and I think there are several player debuts that people will remember, and they will always sort of think back and always remember some of the passes he played. but he was one of those players that second he arrived. I think there's stories about Gerrard and Carragher talking about him in training, saying the same thing. But as soon as you saw him on the pitch, you knew Liverpool had bought a player.
You only have to see the way he struck the ball to think that, this is a player straight away. What was his debut? Because the one that always sticks out for me is West Brom early doors.
Yeah, West Brom early doors.
September,
didn't they?
Yeah.
It might have been Norwich's debut.
I remember him against Charlton maybe a couple of months later, and he was playing on his own. He was just getting it, giving it 30 yards, getting it back, giving it the other way 30 yards. Brilliant player, won a lot as a player. Then he moved on to look at the other teams he played for, Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, once he left Liverpool. Brilliant player who has now transitioned into a brilliant manager, hasn't he? So just a brilliant.
And he's so cool as well, isn't he?
Yeah. I remember one of his early games, the Neil Mellor game against Arsenal. Again, just really classy. Obviously, took his goal really, really well. But just the way Liverpool played football, I remember at the time thinking, how have we got this lad? It just felt like we had a Spanish manager, and somehow he'd said a few nice Spanish words and managed to bring him in. But at the time, Liverpool had been slogging it, and to bring him in, and as soon as he arrived, I thought, this is a Real Madrid, Barcelona type player, but here he is playing for Liverpool at the time. And incredible player.
I still think it's quite rare to have that kind of player in a Liverpool team. Really, when you think about how many of those kind of players have come since, Thiago is the obvious one, but obviously didn't quite. It obviously didn't quite work for him. I think Alexis McAllister has sort of sometimes you see sort of shades of that sort of just being totally majestic on the ball, but I still think it's quite a rare. I think those sort of players are always adored, aren't they?
Yeah,
because they're just such a joy to watch.
Yeah, he had a really good season as well in the 08-09 when Liverpool went so close to beating Manchester United. That was probably his best season for Liverpool, actually, because he broke his ankle on New Year's Day, didn't he, in 2005. Yeah. Frank Lampard against Chelsea. So he sort of came back, was it April time? And Liverpool had already sort of navigated a lot of the tough ties in the Champions League, but obviously gets his goal in the final. Yeah, just a legend. Wins the FA Cup 12 months later. Almost won the league. Yeah, what a player.
What a player. Let's move on. I mean, we're not going to have a great big chat around Leverkusen, but let's pick our teams and make some predictions. Go on, Beth, we'll start with you. Give us your goalkeeper and your back four.
Kelleher stays in. Trent stays in. I'd be tempted to give Gomez a start alongside Van Dijk. Obviously, it looks like, as you say, Konaté's back in training and hopefully won't be ruled out. But I also think sometimes you do have to reward players for the performances, and I think Joe Gomez was man of the match on Saturday. So while it's Konaté's shirt to lose, really, I still think it's a game that Liverpool obviously want to win, certainly don't want to lose. But it's a game with
win this. You're very much there, aren't you?
Yeah. So the stakes aren't quite as high as maybe a Premier League game, and for that reason I'd be tempted to whack Joe Gomez in there. Probably bring Robbo back in, obviously had a rest at the weekend. So Robertson, Van Dijk, Gomez and Trent.
I'd just go with Konaté over Gomez. I can see the point, totally get Bet's point. But I just think this is a big opportunity, isn't it, to get 3 points and then they're on 12 points from the Champions League, and then you can really start to look at that Real Madrid game a little bit differently, and then Girona and PSV to come as well, isn't it? And any more in there as well. I think it'd just be a real sort of buffer if they made it to 12 points this early on, and I'll go with Konaté over Gomez.
I'd stick with Beth's line on the same idea that football's sometimes about momentum, and I feel like Gomez, he'd be feeling good after that performance, getting back in the team, getting playing again quickly, and you want to make some changes for this, but not too many, and I feel like that's one of the structural changes that works. Robertson is the same. I think he works bringing him back in, and they've got enough rest then before Aston Villa. But like you say, the chance to get on to 12 points and to almost use, did they play 2 games after Christmas? 1 or 2 games?
So Girona's on the 10th of December, PSV's in January.
Is PSV the last game?
Yeah. So they've got a chance to basically just use that as a rotation game, haven't they? So, I mean, it'd be massive if they can get to 12 points tomorrow night.
Could even go top, couldn't he? He's second at the moment and join top with Aston Villa.
Yeah. That would be my back four. Stick with your midfield then, Gorst.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only one is maybe Curtis for Szoboszlai, which I think I'll go with. McAllister and Gravenberch keep their places.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. A word on Jones. I mean, him and Szoboszlai seem to be trading good performances at the moment, but every time you put one in, the other one comes in and then has a better performance.
Yeah.
But Jones was pretty good when he came on,
Really
on
good,
Saturday. Yeah.
Did really well for Salah's goal,
Yeah,
didn't he?
Absolutely, yeah.
Having a good season, to be
Hasn't
fair.
it? Yeah, definitely is.
One of many who are having really good seasons without it being talked about because of maybe one or two other players. Yeah, so Curtis, give him a run at number 10, McAllister and Gravenberg. And then my front three.
Nasty, but go on.
Well, I'm going to just segue onto my front three. I suppose it's just Gakpo or Diaz, isn't it? It's a bit of a similar conundrum at left back as it is left wing.
Would you put Gakpo middle? He did talk about Gakpo playing central.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, Villa's big as well Saturday night, isn't it? Just to sign off for the international break on a real high after coming through an incredibly difficult period. I think Gakpo's played. That'll be his third game in less than a week, so I think I'll put him on the bench and I'll bring Diaz back in with Nunez down the middle.
Yeah, I think just because Diaz has had a little bit more of a rest than Gakpo, I'd be tempted to bring him back in.
I'd be tempted to leave Gakpo in just, again, momentum. I don't like the idea of dropping him right now. I feel like he's never really truly had a run where he's not rested or dropped to the bench, so I feel like he deserves it. And Diaz, I mean, one thing again, I saw someone tweet this the other day, but the Slot seems to have been quite good at it. It's just managing the minutes. He's got substitutions he obviously sticks to, 60 minutes, 70 minutes. So if you can get 60 more out of Gakpo and then bring him off, that would be pretty good, and I would like to stay in. Beth, give us a prediction.
2-1 Liverpool.
I'm not sure whether Leverkusen are sort of the same Leverkusen as last season, really. They won so many games last season, didn't they, sort of late on, and obviously it was incredible what they did, but you know, sometimes late goals masks maybe your true level, if I'm not being too harsh. I'll say 2-1 Liverpool.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at this the other day when I was looking at Leipzig, but they haven't had the most impressive starts, but they've only lost once. They're drawing
Leipzig beat them, didn't they?
Yeah. So, I think at home I always back Liverpool, so I'd say 3-1. I think
if Ian Doyle was here, he'd definitely be predicting a Liverpool defeat, wouldn't he?
He's been desperate to get one in, hasn't he? He's been desperate. He can't have them going through this run of games without dropping points. The cold-hearted Ian Doyle's desperate.
The grizzled vet Ian Doyle.
But 3-1. Yeah, I think at home, if you don't back Liverpool at home, then when can you back them? And certainly against Leverkusen, I feel like there'd be a bit of emotion in the crowd as well to show Alonso, to welcome him, but also show him
what he could have won.
But yeah, but I think there'll be an element of that. There'll be an element of, here's where you could be, and I think in a respectful way, the fans will want to show him that. So, yeah, that's it. That's all we've got time for. Beth, do you want to say goodbye?
Goodbye.
Don't be a stranger, and thank you very much for
thank you very much.
all your contributions.
Thank you everyone for listening, sending nice comments, and yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Well, as long as ESPN are all right with it, you're welcome back on the Blood Red Pod.
Thank you.
Gorsty, you're always welcome back.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
top dog.
Keep on being top dog. And we'll be back on Friday to look ahead to Aston Villa, to look back by Leverkusen, and to start panicking about the international break. Not another one.
Quite looking forward to this one.
Stop. To be fair, I'm off for a week.
Yeah,
Have you got some time off?
Yeah.
Then it's not our problem. Right. See you on Friday. Ta-ra.